Mhm. All right. So what I'll do is we'll just wait for the other self-supported riders to uh, sign up, and then do a little bit more focused, discussion on the for the self-supported. Sankar anyway already has experience with that, and Madhu and the other two can we can address that together. Yeah. For the others who are doing, we have a large group which is doing RQ 1200, most of whom have some experience already with doing RAM qualified events and supported events. The only people who are completely new to the format are Rahul Paul and Someshwar. But Someshwar, I think you've crewed quite often before
Yeah,
that, right?
I proved on 3 races for Windspan India.
Lovely, good. So you have this thing. So Rahul, you and your crew should go over the material which Rutvik has shared, all the material which is the seminars which are there on the YouTube channel already. So you can go through that. What I'll do is now I will just share with you all the brief introduction to UltraSpice and what are the differences in multi-day racing. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just like this. Okay. Right. Yeah, just a brief introduction. This is my background that and my experience that I gained before I started doing the races here. Before I started Deccan Cliffhanger, I was actually exposed to RAM a couple of times. I went and did their seminar also, the RAM seminar. And after that, Deccan Cliffhanger was started in 2014. In 2017, I started UltraSpice, and then in 2018, we started Great Himalayan also. And yeah. Okay, so briefly, so this is where you need, so like I said, on YouTube, you'll find a lot of material already there, which will give you information about what is the differences between your other races or brevet formats and doing supported races like RAM qualifiers. So you'll find that material there. I'm going to assume that everybody has some experience or has at least read the material on crude races. If anybody has needs any more input on that, we can maybe deal with it one-on-one also later. Yeah. So like a race like Deccan Cliffhanger or Great Himalayan, which have time limits which finish in 30 to 40 hours. Like for Deccan Cliffhanger, it's about 32 hours. That kind of a race is called a non-stop race in the ultra cycling world. And what they mean by non-stop is simply that you're not expecting to have very long sleep breaks in a race like that. You'll plan your race as from start to finish with small maybe power naps, etc. And your crew, you can do a non-stop race like that with just one vehicle, just one support vehicle, and at a bare minimum of about 3 crew members, though we would suggest having 4 who are in the vehicle, and they know that they'll have one sleepless night with maybe the crew also will be just sleeping in the car. But basically, that one car is going to be giving the support to the racer for the entire distance, which is about 30 hours. And now the thing is that in that 32-hour race, you sort of the end or the finish of the race is within your sights. It's one day and a few more hours that you're going to be on the road and uncomfortable. And up to that much, we know that the people in your crew are able to push themselves, are able to survive the sleep deprivation, and be able to safely get the racers from the start to the finish. What happens in the longer races is that there's no way that one crew can do this job for very long. So that's the reason why you have to have a minimum of 2 vehicles. And of the 2 vehicles, so let's just assume that there's crew A and there's crew B, and they're divided into 2 vehicles. There'll be a little bit more details we can talk about later about mixing and matching or shuffling your crew between the vehicles. But as of now, let's just assume there's crew A in one vehicle and crew B in another vehicle. And the 2 crews need to rotate so that each crew can go away and get a good rest break, because here we're talking about your timeline is going to go to 48 hours, or 60 something hours, 72 hours, at least you're going to be on the road 3 days. So the Ultra Spice, as you can see, the distances are 600, 1200 and 1750. This year we're not doing the 1750, as you're aware. And the route starts from Goa, goes up to Uti and back. This year we'll be turning around at Coorg, the 1200K. So we'll come back to the rotation of your crew vehicles in a little bit. This slide and all the details that go into putting this together is shared in the seminars on our website with the presentation there. It's shared in the YouTube videos also. So you can work on this a little bit more. Basically, what it tells you is that this is designed for, this was written for RAM, but this applies to any ultra cycle race. So the successful finish of these races requires a lot of work that goes in before you even reach the start line. Once you reach the start line, you consider that as race time, and where the clock starts, and the clock doesn't finish until you're at the end of that race. So this, efficient use and a successful race finish really depends on how much work you've done before you come to the start line, so that during the race you can only focus on racing and the performance that you're putting out there as racers and as crew. Everything else, the more you prepare and plan beforehand, the better it is, the higher efficiency you have during the race. I actually have told racers sometimes that you have to think about your race time from start to finish. You think about it in terms of currency, and you think about the amount of time that you put in to prepare earlier is directly related to how much time you're going to spend during race. So if you think about that time during race as money, you can think about it in terms of, can you afford to waste time on a certain thing, or is it better to have done that preparation before time? So it's a very valuable commodity, is essentially what I'm trying to say here. Once your race starts, and in all these races, the clock starts and doesn't stop till the end. So that time is a valuable commodity that you need to understand how to use properly. There is a seminar which has been conducted by Sapna, by myself, on ensuring good work preparing. Sapna Rachuri, as you know, is the Kabir's crew chief, who's been handling this part of his racing for years now. So there's great inputs from her and Rutvik also. Yeah. So this is the rule that we talked about why you need to have 2 support vehicles at the bare minimum for a race like Ultra Spice 1200. Yeah, for the 600, it's not essential you can manage the 600 in one support vehicle. So, as you know, we require that the racer should be accompanied by a support vehicle at all times. In the daytime, the support vehicle can be leapfrogging, be close to the racer, doesn't have to be in follow at all times. But in the night, the support vehicle has to be with the racer all the time that the racer is moving. So, if for any reason the racer, the crew vehicle has to stop, the racer has to stop also. And this is something that we strictly apply. We hand out, as some of you do know, we give penalties for this. All nighttime rules strictly apply to all racers. So, you have to now think about this from the point of view of your crew members, who are your essential support system to make sure that you do the race safely. You cannot expect them to be on the road 24 hours, day after day. They have to get sleep, and falling asleep at the wheel it's a hazard for everybody. And it's not as uncommon as one would think when you're out on the road like that and fatigued. And see, even if your crew members taking rotations, even so, they're going to be sleep deprived, because even when they go off duty, they're very likely to get only 5 hours, maximum 4 to 5 hours of sleep per day. Then they will be dozing and napping in the car. They can take turns within the crew members, within the support crew. But at the very least, they need to have some 12 to 15 hours in which they go away, get their rest, and come back. So you need to plan your support vehicle transitions in that way. Yeah. All right. So for support vehicles, 1200 and 1750, 2 support vehicles are mandatory. We've said a minimum of two licensed drivers, right? But this is like a real bare minimum. I can tell you now that 2 people will not be able to manage this work. We have had a racer come with one crew which had, one vehicle which had 3 crew members, and the other vehicle had only 2 crew members. And for sure, that racer lost a lot of time because two crew members in one car, it's really hard. So like I said, it's this commodity. Your race time is your commodity. So if you try to compromise on what you require, on you minimize and things like that, you can be rest assured that you will be paying for it with the precious commodity, which is your race time. So keep this in mind. Don't try to cut any corners. It's just totally not worth it. So like I said, a third, preferably 3 crew members in each support vehicle, 2 of whom should be licensed to drive. So yeah, you can just read through it. Both vehicles have to be available to the crew for the entire duration of the race. So, at the most, what we do allow is that when the race starts from Goa, one vehicle can be accompanying the racer to start off, and the other vehicle can join them a little later, or have gone ahead and be waiting, say, at Honavar or something from the previous night to get a whole night's rest and then join this thing. But other than that, it shouldn't be that one vehicle is there with the racer and after a second day or something, the second vehicle just goes away and doesn't come back. Yeah. Now this last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th point is really important. No set of crew may be on active follow duty for longer than 15 hours. So it is recommended to you that if you rotate your crew every 10 to 12 hours, sometimes that 10 to 12 hours can extend, but don't extend it beyond 15 hours. Each crew should retire for a little bit of rest for at the most after 15 hours of being in active duty doing your work. And officials will exercise the right to apply a rule related to sleep if this is being flouted. So we will be keeping an eye on you to make sure that your crew is looking rested and not sleep deprived. Crew roles, briefly to go over what are the crew roles. Very simply, if you have 3 people in the car in each vehicle, this is how it would operate. There's one driver, one person doing navigation at the same time, and the third person maybe in the rear doing the rider care. The driver's job is mainly to drive safely. The navigator's job is one of multitasking. The navigator will be navigating, communicating with the other crew, maybe in the other vehicle, maybe the person behind the rider care person. The person in the navigator role will also be reporting to race officials as required at control points, etc. And one of the main jobs that the navigator will be doing, sitting next to the driver there, is watching the racer. Of course, both of you are doing it. The driver and the navigator will both be looking at the racer, observing the racer's body language, and keeping data on, everything, mileage, what distance is covered, what's coming up next, communicating with the racer also, telling the racer what to prepare for, or telling the racer, okay, we're gonna, pull over and give you this. After the racer becomes sleep deprived, it may also involve telling the racer to please eat or drink what has been given to the racer on the bike. So this is the kind of role that you will be doing. It's a parenting job of looking after all the needs of the racer through observation and communication with him, and keeping data. This is kind of important, keeping the data that of things that are happening, making notes in your books. I think it's all detailed in my other presentations. You do this because, this is not the first and the last race that your racers are going to be doing. They will need this data to improve their performance in next races, or to understand how to train better, for, change things in their race later. And the third person, the rider care person, is in charge of ensuring the nutrition, hydration, etc. of the racer, and keeping track of this also. So while the navigator will be keeping track and keeping data of, the metrics, the rider care person who's in the rear should be keeping a track of what nutrition and hydration has been given, and what has been actually consumed. Just remember, very often you'll give the racer half a sandwich or 6 dates, and you write in your chart that, okay, 6 dates given at so and so time. But then when you meet up with the racer the next time, the 6 dates are as they are, or the racer's only eaten 1 or 2. So you need to know that, that nutrition might have been given to the racer, but it's not been eaten. Or your bottles with your whatever protein shake or whatever other hydration supplements you're giving, you may give the bottle and you assume that it's being consumed, but the rider, for whatever reason, hasn't done. So the rider care person has to keep a track of this also, and then figure out how to modulate that, how to change it. This should be things that the crew and the racer have already gone through during this period of training, and do a training ride in which you get the crew also to understand how to take care of you. And a lot of these things should be taken care of during the training rides, but very often in a long race especially, racers taste buds change, their body chemistry changes, and though it might have been decided that they will be eating 1 potato every 3 hours, they're unable to eat the potato. They don't like the taste, they don't want to have it, they're feeling too dry in their throat, whatever. So be aware that that may happen. Then you have to have a replacement food for them, because their nourishment and calories needs to keep going in for them to be able to continue performing. Yeah. This role, of course, can rotate between the 3 crew members. It's not that one person only drives throughout and one person only navigates throughout. You can rotate this, but feel free to, if somebody is driving and happy to keep driving for the entire 10-12 hours, that's also okay, especially if everybody is comfortable and that person is doing the job safely. And the navigation and rider care also, it's all right for it to be assigned to one person throughout, and it's also all right to rotate this duty within the 3 people. At some point if the driver gets sleepy, then obviously the driver has to go in the rear and take a snooze while somebody else drives and someone else sits in the navigator role. Yeah, safety first in any case. There are also other duties that need to be done during all this time. Some massage or physiotherapy, bike tech, sometime mechanic, someone looking into that, somebody's doing some media, cooking, etc. This is a photograph of Kabir at Kargil, where F1 style, he's being attended to by his crew. And yeah, for the crew members, just be mindful of each other's needs. Your own safety depends on making sure that you've taken care of your fellow crew members. Support vehicle and crew transitions. So like I said, for the long races, you need to plan your crew rotations. With an on-duty follow vehicle, with the shift planned out, such as it is, we'll talk in more detail with each of you later. And then, yeah, so just bear in mind, point number 2, that while the on-duty car is with the racer, so in time space, imagine that the racer is the active point that is being tracked. That is your race point. That is the point that is moving to cover the race distance. And off-duty car or vehicle may go away from that point, go to sleep and then come back. But just remember that the racer is moving during that time. So about 180 to 200 kilometers might have been covered by the racer and the follow crew in each shift. So the off-duty crew will have to spend 4-5 hours driving to catch up also. So don't forget about that time. In that 12 hours of off time, a large chunk of time is just spent driving to catch up. Plan meetup points and changes of your shift to synchronize with if there is a team over here. I'm not sure if the team is attending, but if you have a team, then your racers are also rotating. So the team will have to synchronize racer shift and crew and vehicle shift at the same time. Yeah. And sleep breaks for solo racers, you'll have to synchronize with the sleep break for a solo racer. So in a multi-day event, you can sort of assume that the racer will be sleeping about 2 to 2.5 hours per night to be able to continue racing day after day. So you can plan accordingly. So this allows your crew to get only about 4 to 5 hours of sleep max, as I said, right? They'll have other errands also to do. There'll be some shopping to do. There'll be some picking up of food or maybe cooking or something. This was at Durango on the RAM route, where the support vehicle. So of course, this is a 12-day race, and I was with a relay team. So relay team racers were also changing, and the volume of stuff that we had to handle. So when the support vehicles were sort of changing, we had two. God, this was quite crazy. We had 3 vehicles and 2 RVs on this RAM route. But there's a lot of work going on in removing stuff, removing old clothes for washing, removing the garbage, making sure that fresh food is going in. If you've taken away lights and things for charging, if the retired crew, the crew that's going for rest, might be taking, say, the rider's lights for charging or some phone or Garmin or anything. So when you come back, you have to make sure that remains with the racer and with the active vehicle, which is going to be behind the racer. So yeah, this is some of the work that just needs to be done during that transition. So just make sure that you do the transitions properly. Sorry. Yeah. These are some of the plans that, made for RA Solo. So the first one is RA Solo 1500 kilometers, which was 2 vehicles and 2 sets of crew. So this was the orange is the shift time in which the racer is covering 190 to 215 kilometers. Pink is the duty crew, which crew is on duty, which crew is off duty. And then this purple color is the time that all of us meet up and all of us are in one place together, in which you're doing the switch over of the crew. So this was with a solo racer. So crew switch while the racer might be getting food and a little power nap or something. This is how the night transition would work. Day transition also involved a small nap. So while the crew was doing all the shifting, the rider was expected to take a nap. And the night transition on the third day involved a 2.5 hour break in which the solo racer got a full one REM cycle of sleep. The previous transitions were shorter. So we started at around 3 p.m. and after that there was just a small nap, two small naps, sorry, 30 minutes, 1 hour nap, and then the first REM cycle came a day and a half later. So the first night there was no nap for the racer. And then from this point onwards, day 3, which was the 12th, and day 4 and 5, then you repeat the same thing. So you set up a kind of a cycle of duty changes that people will understand quickly, and then you repeat them so that everybody operates with, everybody knows what time they're going to come back on duty, what time they're going to leave duty, what is going to be their the kind of work that they do. Yeah. This was for Ra 2-person team, for which is a 2,200 kilometer race. We had one follow vehicle and one RV. So the one follow vehicle stayed, but we had 2 sets of crew members. So the follow vehicle always stayed with the racers, and the racers also slept in the follow vehicle only. The RV was used for the resting crew to go sleep, eat, cook, and move ahead. And the RV had a permanent driver in it. So we had 2 teams, Team Chai and Team D was my team, and the crew changes. So we can look at these again in more detail later. Over here, there was no night halt, 2.5 hours break, because it was a team. So they were sleeping in the car and the crew was only sleeping afterwards. So we were doing faster transitions of each crew change. We didn't have time off for crew changes. We just did quick crew changes every time that we had to. One moment. This is slightly more complicated. I'll share this with you all later so you can spend a little bit more time seeing how this was done. This was somebody's schedule from RAM, but then again, it involves 3 vehicles and 3 sets of crew. So there's multiple ways in which to design this. Yeah, what we can do is once you all share what you all are planning to do, we can then go over them and see how the plan is working. Hi, Rutvik. We won't take any questions right now from people. We'll take the questions at the end of the next part. The next session is going to be, Rutvik is going to handle the route details for 600 and 1200. Yeah? Handing over to you.
Hello, how's it going? Divya, I need to share my screen. I need permission. Is my screen visible? All right. So I'll explain the route combined for the 600 and the 1200 to start with. We start off on Bogmalo Beach, right outside Leon's hideout, which is just on the beach. And we make our way up onto Airport Road. And we turn right to go towards the Panjim Karwar Highway, which is National Highway 66. From here on, the route goes all the way south. For the most part, until Honavar, we'll stay on NH 66. We go through quite a bit of rolling patches in Goa. Then we cross Margao, which is one of the biggest towns in Goa, and after which there's a tiny short climbs, and then we cross over in Karnataka after Palolem. and the route is all the way rolling until we get in Karwar, which has a flat patch along the beach. After Karwar, we go over very small towns and make our way to Honawar, which is going to be the first control point. At Honawar, NH66 continues south. That's where we take our first turn. We take a left turn towards Jog Falls, and it immediately starts getting quite hilly, and you start climbing up into Jog Falls. That's where the second control point is. That is going to be Jog Falls. It's right outside the entry gate for the Jog Falls viewing area. From Jog Falls, we then go into Anandpuram, which is a very tiny town, and from Anandpuram, we then take a left turn and go towards Sagar in Karnataka. For the self-supported racers, the first opportunity to access your drop bags is going to be in Shimoga. We'll discuss about drop bags and how you access them a bit later in the session, but just keep in mind that Shimoga is going to be the first place where you'll be able to access your drop bags. From Shimoga, we again start climbing a little bit into Tarikeri, and you get into the really beautiful spice plantations right around after Tarikeri into Chikmagalur. And this year we've changed the route a little bit to go across. We get into Belur, and then we bypass some of the pretty sections that we used to have in the past, but because of quite a few construction issues, we are having to bypass, and then we are actually going to go into Hassan, which is quite a big town, and take the major highway that goes towards Bangalore to go to Ramnathpura. And from Ramnathpura, there's a bypass road that climbs all the way to Coorg through the beautiful coffee plantations. And in Coorg, that is Madikeri, that's going to be the finish line for the 600-kilometer racers. And for the 1200-kilometer racers, that's going to be a U-turn point. Madikeri is also going to be the second access for drop bags for the self-supported racers. At Madikeri, you take a U-turn and follow the same route all the way back to Goa. This map file is available on the website for download and to view. I've observed that there's quite a few issues in elevation, as you can see in the chart below. I'm not too sure as to why Rideway GPS is showing false elevations somewhere around here. If you zoom in into this section, there's this patch, and there's one or two more patches that are similarly showing false elevations. I'm trying to figure out what the reason is, and you'll have the final map on the same link. So just, keep up to date with the emails in which we'll provide more information about the routes if there's any changes. And in the next couple of weeks, you'll also receive the turn-by-turn navigation guide so that you have some advanced time to prepare how you're going to use the navigation grids. Is there any questions regarding the route, or regarding specific locations, regarding anything else that is around the route?
Hi, Ritwik, this is Siddharth here.
Yes, hi Siddharth.
Yeah, so any places which, maybe a moderate speed rider might be covering in night, and where we need to be careful, because some of the places we might be crossing at night time and may not be safe from wildlife, just in case if Neeraj can point out.
Yeah, so most likely racers would be passing in the night time past Shimoga. after Shimoga, we don't get inside of any wildlife sanctuaries. We bypass most of them, but mostly after Shimoga and just before Madikeri is where you want to be extremely careful because the route goes through pretty dense forests, and elephant sightings are quite common, but they're still not as common as what we see down in Kerala, which are bypassing, which are not going into actually this year at all. So again, in the nighttime, it's always great to remain in close proximity of your racers. So yeah, that's just two locations that pop in my mind right off.
Can you just repeat those two names, please? Sorry.
Yeah, so just after Shimoga, somewhere around here in Chikmagalur, and just before Madikeri is where there's thick forests on the road.
Thanks, Ritvik.
Anyone else have any questions or comments or would like to give in an input?
Ritvik, Nivedita here.
Yes, hi.
Want to know the toll gates, how many toll gates we will get?
I don't have a complete list of toll gates, but yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else? Any questions? Or we could just move on to discussing about the crewing plans and the shift change plans for the RQ racers.
One last question from my end on the route. Where exactly would be, nighttime temperatures too low and where we need to, take extra care for riders at night?
So a great way to actually look at temperatures and environmental conditions is using apps. One of the best apps I found is Epic Ride Weather. It's available both on Play Store and on Apple's App Store. It's very simple to use. What you do is you just export this file into a GPX file and then import the GPX file onto Epic Ride Weather, and then you'll get all information such as wind direction, wind speeds, the different temperatures during the day, sunlight, the UV index. All of these things are, easily accessible on Epic Ride Weather.
Thanks, sir.
Ritvik, another question.
Yes.
Any hotels like En route hotel, do we get any suggestion in route book?
We don't give suggestions about hotels in route book, but all the towns that we go through have good hotels right on the route. So if you just research the route a little bit, look up the locations on Google Maps, you'll be able to find hotels really easily. Most of the towns that we go through are kind of touristy towns. So, you'll be able to contact most of the hotels right away on the phone or even make bookings online.
Okay, thank you, Ritvik.
Hi, Ritvik, this is Manik here.
Yes,
can you
hi.
tell me, hi, can you repeat what was the app you said for the direct winds?
Yeah, it's Epic Ride Weather.
Epic Ride Weather.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's this one. I'll share the link on the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? All right, so let's move on to discussing the different race plans, the racing and crewing plans that you've come up with. Anyone would like to start the conversation by telling us what you've planned regarding crewing and rotation of crews? Some of the experienced racers who have been at UltraSpice might want to take a head start and start the conversation here. Who do we have?
So Ritvik, if, since experienced people are not talking, we have 2-car plan, and we are planning to have a day shift and a night shift. A day shift would have a longer hours like 13 hours probably, and night shift would have around 11 hours. That's a very raw planning. We are, still in the planning phase. So what kind of challenges we'll face if we are planning day shift and night shift?
So it's quite interesting because most people would go about planning in a similar way. There's just a few things that you want to keep in mind that when the day shift is going to finish their shift, it is probably going to be late evening, early night hours. So finding hotels might be a challenge, and checking into hotels might be a challenge for you guys. So it's always good to take an idea uh, right from the afternoon, like what is the expected mileage for today, and what place or what time are we expecting to finish the shift, and start making calls ahead to maybe look for places around that you could use as rest spots. And then uh, the second phase of the same plan is going to be making sure that you reach the racer the next day after you finish your shift. So looking at the terrain, what the racer has planned for himself as to when they expect to take a nap, when they expect to race really hard, and things like that would be kind of a challenge when it comes to dividing your shift into a day and a night shift.
What would be the ideal divide then?
It all depends on what the racer has planned. So what when I crewed for one of the racers, what we had planned is we'll change shifts exactly when the racer is planning to take a nap. That way we're not wasting any time wasting any time stopping the racer just to change crews. And then we extrapolated, we just went ahead 12 hours, and that would be the next shift change. But it all depends on what your crew members are comfortable doing, and what the racer is actually planning in the race.
Thanks, sir.
Do we have Mustafa or Sapna, Kabir, or even
Kabir,
I'm here.
so would you guys want to share some of your experience regarding crew shifts and planning crew changes, and the planning that goes around these two different things, that is the race and then the crews, and then how do you integrate these two things together?
सपना है ना?
हाँ कबीर तू हाँ मैं आहे
So you tell them.
Okay, so we usually plan for the hours as the someone else mentioned right now. So we also plan accordingly day shift and night shift. So some few hours here and there it might happen, but I think that is the easiest way to do it.
And how do you plan, how do you make sure that the crew gets sufficient rest and they also get sufficient time to catch up with the racer? Is there any strategy use or any tips and tricks?
Even if we plan that now, that will completely change as per the race and at what time we are reaching at which place. Sometimes we may not reach at the time we are planning to reach at a particular venue. But then accordingly, we'll have to make sure that if one shift is reaching after 12 hours at one place, that shift doesn't leave the place until they are properly rested, so that the other team can take care of the rider till the time this shift is rested and catch up with them.
Right.
50% of it will change on the route, even if we plan as much as we want right now.
Correct. Do any of other racers want to share what their plans are? Maybe have a discussion about, things that go around planning, crewing, and crew shifts?
I would just suggest that you can sort people out who is better to crew in nighttime and who is better to crew in daytime, because that doesn't make sense. Who can't stay awake at night, you will keep him at night shift, and he is suffering or he is not that efficient in nighttime. So you can first ask them that what time you are mostly comfortable to crew for. So we can sort people out कि हाँ बाबा इसको रात में रखना है इसको दिन में रखेंगे. और I would suggest कि रात में जो सबसे अच्छा who can drive, keep him at night time, because you will be do lot of downhills and all, so you need a good accurate driver behind the rider in night time. So in daytime we can anyways leapfrog, we can go ahead, we can stop, so that is not that tight job to do. But in night time, yes, you have to keep your best driver as a follow vehicle driver.
Yeah, that is a really good input. Managing which crew members are active and efficient in what time of the day, and placing them accordingly. I see there's Lavesh and Murtaza as well who've done multi-day races. There's also Shankar, I believe, who's done multi-day races. Could you guys tell us some of the challenges that you faced in multi-day races that you would actually not face in shorter races like DC? Even Gopi could answer, could put in some inputs of his own as to what are some challenges that one might see in a multi-day race that are quite not visible in shorter races.
Rutvik, I have one suggestion. Whoever is whoever is in the day shift, when they reach for their sleep in the night, they must make sure if their other crew is coming and eating after they reach the place, there should be food, because most of the places get closed by 9:30.
Correct. Yeah,
so they can order it in advance and then request to keep it or something like that.
Yeah. So basically, what this means is that crews need to meticulously, look after the other crew, even if they're going off shift. The off-duty crew has some responsibility towards making sure that the on-duty crew are able to do their job efficiently, and help them in any way that they can, even when they're resting. Should we open the forum for a general Q&A? We can have questions regarding crewing, but also regarding the event overall as well.
How many checkpoints are at places where it's an hotel and stay is also available at those checkpoints?
We will be sharing a list of checkpoints in the next few days. Just keep in mind that RAM qualifier racers have to make their own arrangements for stay and food. The control point might or might not be located in a hotel or a restaurant. The RQ racers will have to plan if they intend to use a restaurant or a hotel nearby and make their own arrangements for it.
Okay.
And as a guider's point of view, I would suggest कि पहला 200 किलोमीटर में ज़्यादा push मत करो, because after 200 kilometers you start climbing, and these are pretty steep climbs. So yeah, you might suffer next 4 or maybe 300 kilometers, because initially we are in that zone that it is race, we have to push, we have to win, but you end up suffering for next 300 kilometers, because first 200 kilometers is quite rolling, quite speedy terrain. We are in good capacity of pushing to the zone 4 and zone 3, but don't do that. Go with the comfort zone, because cramps aa sakta hai, then heat thoda sa badega when we start climbing, and this might screw your entire plan of times ki kya kahan pe karna, because I still remember in my first attempt in Joke Falls I got a lot of cramps, and it made me around 2 to 3 hours slower than what we planned. So better to go with a comfort zone. And बाद में you can push at night because the temperature goes low and body again responds properly. So ride smartly rather than just pushing hard.
Yeah, in fact, to add to that, I would say that in a 1200 kilometer race, pace yourself for the first 1000 kilometers. And then after 1000 kilometers, if you have anything left in you, then you can start actually pushing your body to the edge because, you have to, there's such a long distance that you have to sustain yourself. So just keep that in mind. I've seen, Kabir will remember in which edition now, when Bharat and Kabir were racing to the finish. And
second
Kabir,
edition and my first edition.
Your first edition, which was the second Ultra Spice. And, Kabir and Bharat reached almost, so Bharat had been pushing himself from day one. This is like a 5-day race. This was 1750 kilometers. So Bharat had been pushing himself all the way to Uti. Uti, he did a snappy turnaround, not even 2 minutes there on the road, back down and kept racing because he was trying to catch up with the first racer and race with the person who was in the first place. And ultimately what happened is he completely ran out of steam on the third night and had to take rest. There was all kinds of issues that he was facing, also some knee problems, something. So finally his crew had to take him off the road to sleep for a few hours in the daytime, in which time Kabir, who had been pacing himself pretty well till then, caught up with him, and the two of them raced together for about 300 kilometers till Honavar. At Honavar, Kabir decided to take a 15-20 minute, I think it turned into a 40-minute halt in which it was very hot, so he cooled off a little bit, had a change of clothes, and Bharat went ahead and said, he was like trying to now maintain his second position in this race. And he didn't stop at all, didn't, recharge himself. And in the end, Kabir sort of just at a very easy pace, we watched him just cross Bharat and reach the finish line before Bharat. So like he said, be smart in how you approach these races. These races are not so, they're not short races like 10, 50, 100 kilometers where you can push yourself. So, yeah. Any questions? So, Rutvik, I'm just trying to see if all 4 of the self-supported riders are here. I've not gone over their rules or how they approach the race. So I can see Madhu is here. Shankar was here. And then there are 2 more. Shankar is here, right? There's Vineet. And Vineet and one more person. I don't see them here even now. No, I don't see them. Should we do that, or Madhu and Shankar, if it's okay with you, maybe Rutvik, just thinking off the top of my head that we can do a separate session for the self-supported racers.
There's just 3 self-supported racers. So
4. There are 4.
Oh.
But I think 1 minute, I'm just checking whether see, there's Vineet Kumar, Manik. I saw Manik just now. So only Vineet is missing, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Vineet, if you're here, could you just let us know? If not, no. So should we go over the self-supported things then?
Yep, sure.
Are we? Huh? Okay. I shall just pull up the presentation. Self-supported rules and regulations.
Are we done with RQ discussions?
Okay, if do the RQ folks have any more questions, then they can switch out if they want. I think we've covered everything from our side.
Divya, Rutvik, we are still in the planning phase, so we
Okay.
have many discussion, many questions later on. So, how will be the mode of communication with you people? Will be having another seminar, or you want us
We'll
to
definitely
email you?
have, yeah, maybe what we can do is we can have another seminar next weekend or next week, maybe Thursday, Friday again next week, in which you all can come back with your plans and we can have a more specific discussion. Would that work, Someshwar?
Yeah, we will. That will definitely work, because currently we are in a very raw stage. It will be
Okay.
very premature questions to ask.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Divya, I have one question. So in the initial meeting time itself, you told, right? So we will confirm what will be the situation based on the inputs. So when we can expect that, because we have hotels and other stuff
Right,
to
to
be
book.
booked, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
we're hoping that we'll take a call in the next couple of days, depending on the announcements and whatever information we can get. But yeah, it's a difficult situation because we are on wait and watch, and our idea is that if we are able to conduct the race within the permissions, in the sense that there is no reason that we can't conduct the race, then we would like to continue and do it. And like I said, it's a small enough group. So what that means is that we end up having to wait and watch a little longer than we can promise you that we can have a final decision. So, by in 2 days time, by day after, maybe by Sunday, if something has come out which very clearly says that we are not going to be able to do it, then we'll have a definite answer. But if it's still ambiguous and there is a chance that the race can take place, then we would prefer to continue with that.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah. So if there are no more questions from the RQ and the RAM style participants, we can just focus on the self-supported now.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Rutvik, can you do one thing? Just call Vineet if possible, if you have his number, and just ask him to join in, so that at least all 4 are there.
So is it okay we leave the meet, right?
Yeah, those of you who are in the RQ and RAM style may leave. And the
Sure.
others, anyone who is planning self-supported later can stay on. Yeah. Okay, so we have Shankar, Madhu, and Lavish is thinking self-supported sometime.
Yes, I'm thinking, but I want that RQ title.
Good. That's a good plan.
That's
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
Yeah. Any questions from your side, Lavish, about the route or about?
No, Ray, I don't have it out.
Okay. All right. Any news from him, Rutvik?
Nah, he didn't answer the call. So
Okay, okay.
Anyways,
He'll start, he can watch
The recording
will anyways be available, right?
Yeah, he can watch
So
the
I think
recording.
we can leave a message and
Yeah.
we can watch the
That's
recording.
right. Yeah. Okay, I'll just start share screen. Yeah. Okay. Okay, is it visible?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going through that again. All right. So this is basically addressing the rules for self-supported. Obviously, I'm not going to read the whole rule book here. I'm just going to go over some of the points that you need to keep in mind, which are particularly because they are different from the supported races, and also differ because it's a race. Our rules are also different in this format from brevet rules. And I know that most of you who take part in the self-supported are randonneurs who are used to doing brevets by brevet rules. So the rules that I'm going to address here are essentially the ones that point out the differences to you in this. So for the rules, number 4 is traffic laws and law of the land, which you are expected to follow, even though there's no vehicle involved, but even cyclists are expected to follow the traffic rules. Drafting of any human-powered vehicle that is not participating in your category of the race is also not allowed. So you're not allowed to draft, obviously you're not allowed to draft any motor vehicle according to our rules, but also to make it a little bit more specific, you may not draft somebody who is not in your category. So in the Ultra Spice race, you have self-supported and you also have RAM qualifier racers, right? So that's what we mean by you're not allowed to draft somebody else. So you also can't draft somebody who is some friend of yours and you happen to be going through your area and some cyclist comes out to help you by giving you, and you draft another cyclist. So you can't draft anyone who is not participating in your category of the race. Yeah, that includes any cyclist, like random cyclist or someone who's in the RAM qualifier section or any other category. Category does not apply to gender or age. So in the self-supported, women and older age categories can mix and ride with each other, but this is related to distance. So you can't distance, relay team or supported, unsupported. Yeah. Race officials may issue penalties for traffic violations. So the thing is that in the self-supported category, y'all are cycling on your own. It is a safety issue if y'all are not following traffic rules. So normally when there's a car, I think in India we're far more, with traffic violations for cars are a bigger and more obvious sort of a thing in, say, Deccan Cliffhanger or Ultra Spice. We see a car breaking a red signal or doing something, so we focus our attention on the cars because we expect the cyclists to be following the rules in the supported races. But in self-supported, there's no car here, but we expect 100% that the racers will be following the traffic rules to a T. So no braking signals, no cycling on the wrong side of the road, no doing nothing which may in any way hamper your own safety. And in this, we will be strict about this in seeing cyclists breaking traffic violations because we're not going to be observing you all the time. And you are solely responsible for your own safety. You don't have a vehicle with you doing anything. You may be, on your own. And we need to know that you are aware enough and taking care of your own safety yourself. So when we talk about self-supported, we really want to see you taking care of yourself completely, because that's what it is. You're going to rely on yourself entirely. So point number 5, drafting, as I also mentioned. This is a different rule. This is about drafting each other in the same category. So you may be a group of 3 or 2 people who have decided to buddy up and ride with each other throughout the race, and then you may draft each other. This thing is that this needs to be by mutual consent. What this means is that, say, for example, in the first 1750 self-supported, we had Sundar, Gallin, and Nadir. The 3 of them have been riding brevets together already for quite a while and were good friends. So they had pretty much decided that they are going to ride together only. Now, in a situation like that, you can draft each other, no issues. What did happen in the same race was that the 2 racers who were racing for the first place was Bharat and Sundaram Narayan from Goa. They were competing with each other. So just remember this, that this is a race. So as long as 2 or 3 of you decide, hey, we don't want to race each other, we just want to do the ride together, we're not interested in a position or whatever, it's okay, and that's between you two to mutually agree to do that. But if you want to draft a competitor and your competitor says, no, I explicitly do not want to provide this to my, I don't want that person to get advantage of me and race me to the finish. A racer can explicitly say, I don't want my competitor drafting with me. And this is a slightly different rule from most other races that we have put in here for this purpose only. And complaints will be dealt with if a racer tries to draft a competitor after the competitor has said no. Then we could warn or issue a penalty. And in that same race, the first 1750K, we did have an issue in which Sundaram wanted to ride with, it was not just draft, but he wanted the company and wanted the safety and security of riding with his competitor. And Bharat had to call me and say, I'm denying that. I don't want him to do it. So just bear this in mind, the four of you. You're all friends until you're racing each other. These are the rules related to self-sufficiency, official support, and drop bags. So we expect each racer to be fully self-sufficient. No support vehicles are permitted of any kind. But however, like I said, you guys can help each other during the race. That's up to you. You need to be fully self-supported in terms of hydration, food, nutrition, mechanical requirements. If you have a mechanical issue on the road, you have to be able to take care of it yourself. And you can avail of whatever vendors, shops, hotels are there on the race itself. Please make sure that all your purchases are paid for in full, and ensure that your interactions are also conducted respectfully. Complaints of non-payment, etc., any other form of nuisance if we get a complaint of something of this sort, we will issue a penalty. And the reason for this is that we, go down this route. We do this race every year after year, and people become aware, they see us, and, we don't want to have a situation where somebody has created a nuisance value in this race this year, and then the next year when we go back, some other racer gets abused or anything else because something happened, or we are told, the officials are told off for not, or people are inhospitable to us. We do bank on people wanting us to be there and being nice to us. Racers may not have friends and family come out on the route to cheer you or in any way assist you. With prior intimation, you may let us know if somebody is going to be coming to a manned control point to meet you. No support, food, drinks, etc. may be exchanged, and a violation of this will lead to a penalty or disqualification. Mechanical assistance may be availed of from local bike shops, etc. Same conditions as 6B. Oh, in Great Himalayan, there was no technical or mechanical assistance on the road. For Ultra Spice, you do have them. You have them at Shimoga, Chikmagalur, even Cool. There are bike shops and you can get things done. But just make sure that you pay for whatever assistance is there. And if you have to go off the route, come back to that same point and start racing again. You will be given 2 labeled bags before the race on the inspection day to pack. Each drop bag will be labeled for each drop bag location. So you can pack it accordingly. The first drop bag location is at around 300 plus kilometers. I think Shimoga is 320 or 330. That's
335.
335. Yeah. So at that location, your bag with the Shimoga label on it will be available to you over there. So you pack accordingly. The second bag will be available at the turn point in Coorg. And they'll only be accessible over here, not on the road anywhere. Please don't pack any valuables and no perishable items to be put in the bag either. Yeah. Yeah, official vehicles, you may not access these bags on the route from the official vehicle. At the drop bag locations, the hotel rooms that we provide are shared accommodation. at Anandpur and at Coorg. You can sleep there, rest, change, etc., and just make sure that you are considerate of everybody else in the other racers who come and go. And the last point, the drop bags must be repacked before you leave. So whatever, as you know from Coorg, you're going to be flagged off for your second stage. So this race, the self-supported race, is a race of it's a stage race. So you're literally you're racing two 600-kilometer stages. And in the first stage, ends at Coorg. Your timings and the control point details, maybe we'll go over with you all in more detail in the next time. How much time you have, what are the kind of average speed you need to maintain, etc., to do it. And then once you finish at Coorg, you get like a night's sleep. Depending on what time you arrive, you get to sleep at least 5 to 8 hours or whatever, and then we flag you off again the next morning. So the next morning before your flag off, please make sure that your drop bag is packed again. We are not going to go over there and hunt for stuff that you left behind. So the drop bag must be packed and left over there. Don't leave a mess in the room either. And if you've not packed it and there's some missing items, we will not be held accountable for it. Okay, also vendors and resources. We provide you resources in the form of information for bike shops, technical, accommodation at Bogmalo, on the route as well. We'll tell you about restaurants. Just make sure that, it's a two-way thing. You need to, we can't be held responsible if you're disappointed in any of these. These are separate vendors from us who are doing whatever they're doing. If any disagreements are, this is between you and them. Racers and crew are all expected to behave respectfully towards all these resources that we, have, that you see en route at start venues and start, finish, turnaround, and on the entire route actually. Ensure you clear all your bills, please. No misuse, littering in the hotel rooms. Damages, if any damages to the hotel rooms will be, distinct from you if we find such a situation. Racers vacating rooms in a manner that is not acceptable by hotels will be given a time penalty. We've had this situation that the hotel room was left in such a mess that we were left shamefaced. So that's not acceptable. All expenses towards any resources that you use that is extra from what we are providing, those you take care of. So see, we provide you the accommodation at Anandpuram and at this place. It's recommended that you use those because that's how the time frames have been worked out. But if you don't sleep, the thing is that a lot of times, people at the it's 335 this time, when you reach, not Anandpuram, sorry, Shimoga. You feel like you don't want any rest, and then later down the road you'll need sleep and want to. So just plan yourselves out also in a way in which you also sustain for the entire duration of the race. Yeah. Safety, sleep, and medical support. Like I said, that you are entirely responsible for your own safety. Decisions to rest or quit based on your health. So sorry, the first one is altitude race is related to Himalayan, but on the second part, that avoiding a particular section of the route during the night, this applies to the Ultra Spice also, because there are some sections, especially the Coorg section from Bhage till I think that's Somesh. There are some areas there which there's no. It's not a very high safety issue. It's just that these are forest sections. There's no availability. So the thing is that you are racing a self-supported race. So you have to take a decision about your own safety and whether or not you should race a certain section. Yeah. Like I said, safety rules are to be strictly adhered to. This applies to lights, reflective vests, etc. And keeping your phone charged so that we can track you. Traffic rules have to be followed. If you're riding with a buddy, riding abreast, just Just be aware, it's okay once in a while you're riding with each other, but single file is recommended, especially if you're aware that there's traffic over there. Don't obstruct traffic in any case on either side of the road. Hand signals need to be given. Please do this. This is something that cyclists just don't do on a regular basis, but this is just for your own safety. And pull off the road entirely if you're stopping. Don't just stop in the middle of the road and something comes from behind that is not expecting you to do that. So here's, rule number 8D is if we see someone who is riding with a great deal of unawareness, and the race officials will use their discretion if required to deem a rider incapable of being safe and taking care of himself or herself. So if you're riding in an unsafe manner, first thing we'll do is to try and stop and tell you to do correct your mistakes. And if this continues, if a racer continues to ride in a way that we think, the officials think, is unsafe and is going to lead to some accident, or at least even a potential for that, we have made this rule here for you to know that if that continues and we fear for your own safety, we might disqualify you. We have that right to disqualify you to prevent injury or harm to yourself. And our verdict on this will be final. We've had enough experience of observing this and knowing what to anticipate. Night halt for sleep is provided. I've already told you that. Race officials reserve the right to pull a rider off the course and order them to rest. If we feel, okay, one is safety issues due to not riding properly with respect to traffic rules, etc. The other aspect is sleep deprivation. So if we feel a racer is sleep deprived and unable to ride without falling asleep, etc., there also we may ask you to pull over and go to sleep for a while. Oops, what did I do here? Sorry. And in case of medical emergencies, you must immediately inform race officials and also immediately start the process of seeking local medical help, because we'll give you a list of medical centers and hospitals and clinics along the entire route that you must keep with you in the hard copy should be with you at all times. So inform us and also quickly seek some local medical help until we arrive. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Any questions?
Yeah. Hi. Couple of questions. One is like for the benefit of all of us, if you could explain how a stage race works, the timing of it.
Okay.
Second is about the drop bag. So there are 2 drop bags. And if I'm not wrong, I think in the previous one I was seeing the seminar, the drop bags are specific to their location. Like drop bag A is not available in drop bag B location and vice versa.
Yeah. Okay? Right.
Only these 2 points, if you can elaborate, I think.
Okay. So I will bring up, just give me a minute. I'll pull up, I will just pull up the details of the controls, etc., how it works for you guys. No? So briefly, before I start the screen share, just to tell all the self-supported racers, it's a 1200 kilometer race. So like Shankar has done the 444 self-supported at the Great Himalayan. That was also split into 2 stages of 222 kilometers each. In the 1200 Ultra Spice, it's split into 2 stages of 600 kilometers each. So when we talk about a stage race, that means the 4 of you are, flag off together from the start line, which is at Bogmalo. And the time that you arrive at Coorg, at Marikeri, will be noted. That will be your stage 1 timing. After that, you get to rest during the night, and then your flag off is the next morning, early morning, which starts your second stage. That is your return stage from Madikeri to Bogmalo again, which is another 600 odd kilometers. So, and the second stage timing will again be noted. So the winner of the race is the one who has the least time cumulatively of both the stages. So it's not necessary that the person who wins the first stage wins the race, because it's going to add, your second stage also matters to it. So how you strategize your race, if you've seen any of the stage races like Tour de France or anything, you know how it goes. People win stages, but it's the person who wins overall that wins the race. So in the Ultra Spice, it will be your cumulative time of both the stages that will be counted. I will just pull up. Yeah. So this is your stage 1. Yeah. So this will undergo some changes, small changes, because the race route has undergone some change, and even your control point is changing. So for example, so we do have control points that you have to pass, which we will be noting down your timings as you pass the control points. We don't have cutoffs for them, however. And this control point CP4, which is at Anandpur last year, that's going to change to Shimoga. So that was at 291 kilometers, and I think that was a bit too soon. And you guys also know, you can, like by the end of 300, if you're people who are doing 600 breves and 1000 breves, by the end of 300 kilometers, you're not really ready to rest. So we pushed it to Shimoga, which Anandpur also didn't have anything else going on there. So Shimoga Hotel is right in the heart of the city. There's restaurants around there. There's fruit shops and food, whatever. So that seems to be a better control point for everyone over here. That will come at 335. So we'll change this a little bit. Your drop bag 1. So the drop bag that is going to this mid control point will be labeled. You pack it for whatever you're going to require between Shimoga and Madikeri. So from Bogmalo to Shimoga, control point 4, that is 335 kilometers. Whatever you're going to need is going to be with you already, and you probably won't need a change of clothes or anything. But at Shimoga, you can stop and access your drop bag. You may have some supplies that you want for the rest of the night and the next day. So you can pick them out of your drop bag. Maybe a change of clothes can be there. And also just remember that you will be accessing this drop bag on your way back also. Yeah. Then the control points continue till CP7, which is Madikeri. The details don't look at right now. This distance is going to be longer. It's 600 plus at Madikeri. And you have so this is where you have your first cutoff, that is 40 hours. Yeah. So this is that is midnight. So if you're leaving Bogmalo at, I think your flag off time is 8 a.m. Is that right? 8 a.m. to midnight. That's right. That's 40 hours. That's your first cutoff for 600 kilometers. And so you know what, I'll share these with you so that you can go over the details, but I'll do that. I'll share the details once we've done the corrections for the distances, etc. Right? So you have your cutoff, so you can plan how many, what speeds you need to maintain, etc. And the time of arrival at your CP will be noted for your race time calculation. Okay? Roughly last year, it was 15 kmph to reach there, the minimum required. But our recommendation was to pace yourself to arrive in 37 hours at an average of about 16 to 21 kmph, so that you get more rest over there. So if you plan on reaching by about 9 p.m., you can, before 9 p.m., you can have yourself a good dinner and go to sleep and get a good night's rest. For the second stage, the minimum average needed is 15.38 kilometers with a hard cutoff at the finish again at 8 p.m. on 9th Feb. Yeah, 59 hours. And your flag off for departure at Madikeri is 7 p.m. Sorry, control person time remaining. No, no, it can't be 7 a.m. 1 minute, I'll just see what time your flag off is. Yeah, details of the second stage. Yeah, so we'll just update these details before. I didn't want to confuse you all.
Sure.
I'm
No,
just
this
showing
gives
it.
this gives
We'll
a
share
basic
this.
idea. That's good.
We'll share this in detail in a little bit.
Yes.
Sorry, your start time from Madikeri is 5 a.m. 5 a.m. you start off from Madikeri. Again, from Madikeri at control CP10, which is Shimoga, you'll be able to access your drop bags. And then from there to Bogmalo straight. Yeah. So this probably on your way back, your drop bag. So see, the drop bag that you send to Madikeri can have your, change of clothes to sleep comfortably in the night out of your cycling clothes, maybe some food, and again, some food that you may want to put in your pockets on your return journey, etc. And then again, you'll access your bags at Shimoga on the way, which from Madikeri to Shimoga will be around 280 something odd kilometers, 275 or so. So that will come a little sooner than this thing. But again, it's a rougher route from Madikeri to Shimoga because you're going over all of Coorg and then you're climbing to Chikmagalur and down again. So that is a tougher section. You can catch a quick rest over there and then head for Bogmalo. Yeah. And what are these? Yeah, I'll share this with you all. We won't go into every little detail here. I'll update it and share it with you. Yeah. Okay.
I have a question here in that
Yeah.
screen.
Yes.
So this is Madhu here.
Yeah.
So the thing is, suppose someone completes in 38 hours the first phase and the second phase in 41 hours, is it OTL? So the second phase, it says the cutoff is 39.
Yeah, right. So the cutoffs. No, each stage has to be finished in its cutoff itself.
Okay, the second stage is lesser timings than the first stage. That's what
Right. That's true. I think that the reason for that, there was a lot of calculating. Yeah, I'll go over that. There might be small changes. Like I said, there might be some small changes to this. This was the first time that we were doing the 1200 last year. Rutvik and I will sit down on the details of this and go over the race times. And so there was a whole lot of calculation we did in the background about the averages required and what the route is like to make sure that you're able to do these distances in this time. And we'll also look at what was the performance of the racers last year over these same segments and see if there's any modifications to be done. That's why I was not getting into nitty gritty with you because we need to update it for this year. Yeah.
Sure. I have another question. So the CP are all are manned.
Sorry.
CP points are all manned CP. So we should give a card like I've done only breves, so I give breves
Yes.
or take selfie.
Yeah, no, they're not all manned. We'll instruct each control point depending on what we're going to do there. We'll let you know whether it's manned or not.
Okay. The thing. Next question is: I know it's a self-supported race. We reach Anandpur. So will there be any food given there, or we'll arrange it? But if there's any food, then it will go waste if we also. So,
right. So that's why we don't arrange.
Madikeri.
No, we don't arrange food. Like we'll just. Our focus during this race is more to keep an eye because the difference between breves and this is that this is a race. So, as far as the rules and the regulations go, and we need to keep our role is really to keep an eye on you guys from safety and from a racing point of view, from compliance point of view. So that's why in this race, we don't promise or provide you with any food, etc. But the hotel is located in a place where there is food available. So you can come in there and quickly grab yourself a bite. Yeah, even at Coorg, same thing at Coorg also in Madikeri.
So last question I have is, I know there will be RQ people, crew members with us. or they might be ahead of us, but somewhere we find the crew and they offer something. Is it allowed to take thing, or is it because I don't
Yeah.
want penalties on
Yeah,
that?
it's allowed. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
If it's Kabir's crew, then even the officials are happy to get a bite.
We should be with their crew, no? That is the biggest challenge.
Right, you got to keep up with him. Yeah, Shankar, would you like to share a little bit about your Himalayan experience with the group?
I don't think so.
Come on.
No, of
It was
course.
a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
race.
No, yes. It is definitely, it was. Yeah, so I think one of the main things, just like any other brevet, is to eat. I think that is one major thing that I learned. I starved on Himalayan and I learned a big lesson. And that is something that we definitely have to look out for, whether it's a race or no, or you prepare your nutrition. I think that is the most important. You need energy, and another main thing is the sooner you snap out of brevet mode, the better in terms of speed calculations, because the CPs are going to be aggressive compared to a brevet. That as I've discussed with you, I realized 2 days before the race, okay, this is really not a brevet. I cannot approach it in a brevet fashion at all. So the sooner you get used to it not being a brevet, I think it will help you plan up a little better. Another thing is, one more personal experience is to not race with the other racers. It is a race with yourself. You do not know their training. Unless you know how their training is, etc. I think it will be a futile effort to, race the other racer. You have your target and you do your race. I think that should be the mantra here. This is something that I learned. I didn't know anything about my competitor in Himalayas, that is Vibhav and Chaitanya. And I took a lead at the start thinking, oh, it's all nice. And then, Vibhav comes in. Then I got to know he's trained and he's younger and all that. And, you go in with a wrong expectation and then you will get disappointed in the race, and that might not help you finish the race. So just do your race. I think that is something that I would definitely advise. And that is something that I'm going to be following for my future races, rides, anything, So yes, I think these three I would definitely recommend. Eat well, drink well, and race yourself, or have a target and do that instead of thinking or chasing someone, I would say.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Shankar.
Yeah. I do have one doubt here, because there is a little difference. Okay, because I know Inspire India how much they take care about safety and how much you are concerned about safety. So one thing for us brevet guys, we sleep wherever we want, especially me. Okay, so are there something specific you guys say that okay, you cannot sleep here, you have to sleep on the road? Common sense is ensure you are safe away from the road, because I know I have slept on the side of the road on the track. Okay, so these things are not allowed. It would be better if you just say yes, it's not allowed, so that the others and me myself can get this clarity. If at all I need to take that 10-minute power nap, I am assuming you would say find a safe place away from the road and take that nap. Not on the road, not on the shoulder, not on the median.
Right. So
I've done all of those, by the way.
When I used to ride brevets, I was nicknamed the Culvert Queen, because I used to sleep on the culvert, which was. It was a great place to sleep, but if I rolled off, I would be rolling into a ditch. So I don't know how good it was. But see, our concern about safety is a little bit more directed about you being safe while you're riding. When you stop and when you're sleeping, I think that the issues reduce for sure. It's not such a big concern if you're sleeping. But yeah, for sure, for your own safety, find a place where you can be assured that you're not going to get run over. So definitely sleep in a proper, off the road, off any area where there may be moving vehicles. and in a slightly lit or at least some sort of a place where there is some, other people or some. I mean, for me, sleeping, say, close to a toll booth or something was a good idea because there's a lot of people and activity throughout the night. So even at 3 in the morning, if I slept somewhere on the pavement or something near a toll booth, I knew I was relatively safe in terms of my wallet and my
Correct.
person not being under any this thing, because there's light and there's plenty of people moving around. So for that you have to use your own instinct. We don't have any particular rules about those. We assume that you will look out for your own safety.
No, why I asked this specific question is, I don't know, I might be wrong, but I did hear in LEL or PBP, someone was like, you can't sleep on the side of the road, and then they were, asked to get off and all that. So I just asked because, we do come from the BRM background, na? That's why if it is. Because Himalaya mein to wo chance nahi milta tha, so I didn't ask.
No scope. Right. No, there so we were very clear. No sleeping.
At all there, so it really didn't matter. Since here
no night riding and no stopping and trying to sleep or anything on the side of the road in that place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Vineet.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am.
Yeah, we've sort of just finished our session. What I'll do is I'll send you the links on the, anyway, I've recorded this session also, so you can go over it. And self-supported, I just finished going over the rules with them. I'll send you links to this and previous material to everybody. Actually, there's some other material on YouTube which is specific to self-supported. So we'll filter those and send them to you guys. Yeah, any other questions? Madhu and Manik?
No, Divya, I got clarified.
Okay, great. Okay.
Hi, Divya. One question.
Yeah.
Regarding the stage race, the second stage starts at the specified time, no matter what time I finish in the stage one, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So if somebody finishes after the cutoff, so he is disqualified right there, or is allowed to ride?
No, you can continue riding the next day. You can ride back, no issues. Yeah, the cutoff is for your own safety also, that we want people to be in, because you've got a whole ride to go back. But sometimes it can be a mechanical issue. So it may push you out of the race as such, but you can continue to race back the second stage as well. Yeah. And the other thing about the start time of the stage is that we'll flag off regardless of whether you're there or not. So it's a 5 a.m. flag off. If for any reason somebody wants to sleep another half an hour, 1 hour, or gets late, that's okay with us. The race will still be flagged off at 5 a.m. You will lose a little race time in doing whatever you need to. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So looks like we're done for today, and I think Rutvik will let you all know about the next seminar and what else we're doing with it. Yeah. All right. Goodbye. Good night.
Thanks. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Good night.